Serious question. Does anybody work at the Department of Justice anymore other than Pam Bondi and some of Donald Trump's other sycophants? We're seeing people not just resigning en masse, over 8,000 lawyers and top staffers resigning from the DOJ. They're resigning in very public ways, like on LinkedIn, saying, I'm out. See you later. I tried. Goodbye. And I also think some of these LinkedIn resignation messages are signaling to others, look what I'm doing. There's a path out of it. I tried. And we previously have chronicled people like in the Eastern District of Virginia who literally nailed to the wall when they walked out resignation letters that gave impassioned pleas to others. Get the hell out of here. This Trump regime gives you no chance of survival at all if you care about law and order. And I want to highlight what just went down as well. We've been chronicling how the DOJ has been losing its top talent and talent in general. As I said, 8,000 or so attorneys and staffers, paralegals are leaving. The brain drain is real. Federal judges are commenting about consistently how the Department of Justice is missing basic appearances. They're missing basic deadlines. They are not processing the paperwork. They are blowing statute of limitations. And this is, we talk about high profile cases, but across the board, criminal defense lawyers are feasting right now. They know that they can out-paper fairly easily the Department of Justice just by working a little bit harder, and the DOJ was usually the one who papered everybody else. So you may recall that last week we reported how the head of the Antitrust Division, somebody by the name of Assistant Attorney General Gail Slater, was forced out of her role because she did what she thought she was supposed to do. Even though she was a Trump and J.D. Vance pick, she actually believed when Trump and J.D. Vance said, we want you to go after big tech, that part of her role in antitrust was to ensure that big tech was not engaged in antitrust violations. But you see, when she did that, big tech complained to Donald Trump and they said, why is she going after big tech? We're doing your golden ballroom and we're doing your golden arch or your arc and we're doing all of these things. We're part of the same crew. You got to tell her to stop. And Trump and J.D. Vance told her, you got to stop doing this. And then she was like, no, you don't really mean that, right? And she kept on doing what she was doing. And they were like, no, you're out of here. Get the hell out of here. And they forced her to resign. But we covered that. But when you hear about a forced resignation like that, it's not just her. It's her whole team of pretty talented lawyers as well. They leave, and now they're being welcomed into private practice and firms that are going to pay them well, and they don't have to deal with this Trump regime stuff anymore. So as I talk about these LinkedIn resignations, you have a guy by the name of Mark Hammer, who was the Deputy Assistant Attorney General within the Antitrust Division. Basically, that means he was the number two. He was Gail Slater's right-hand man. And when Gail Slater left, he leaves. The whole teams go as well. And these are actually talented lawyers who are still there. These aren't the best. There is still some talent there, and then they're leaving. Here's his post on LinkedIn. When Assistant Attorney General Gail Slater asked me to join her as Deputy Assistant Attorney General at DOJ's Antitrust Division, I committed to return to public service for a year. And what an extraordinary year it has been. The year 2025 was the high watermark for civil antitrust enforcement, with the largest docket of civil antitrust litigation matters in DOJ's history. Our enforcement cases and investigations targeted high-profile competition concerns in technology, healthcare, entertainment, agriculture, real estate, and financial service industries. It has been the privilege of a lifetime to serve alongside AAG Slater and her leadership team. She is a leader of exceptional wisdom, strength, and integrity. I was grateful to help her lead the hundreds of men and women of DOJ's Antitrust Division. They work tirelessly each day, often without credit or recognition, to preserve competitive markets for the American people. Their talent and dedication was inspiring and made my leadership role easy. I have decided the time is right for me to return to private practice. I am excited to announce that I will soon be rejoining my friends and colleagues at Baker McKenzie. More to announce on that front soon. To AAG Slater and all my DOJ colleagues, please keep up the great work for the American people. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, Substack, and podcast. Everybody search Talking Feds. Harry was a leader in the Washington, D.C.'s main office at the Department of Justice. He was also the top United States attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Now, Harry, when you read what Mark is saying there, he left private work where he was getting paid a pretty decent or good salary to work in this role where he hoped to further the interests of antitrust. And then he sees Slater fired. And so he's like, I'm leaving. I'll see you later. I mean, she was pushed out. I'm going to go back to Baker McKenzie and I'll just do my work there. But what he also mentions here, and I don't think people know this, is that he says the hundreds of people, hundreds, who are working under him, you don't know their names. They don't get the recognition. They work every day, long hours, getting paid like still a decent salary, good salary, but far less than they would make if they were in private practice. And a lot of them do this because of their view of service, their love of antitrust law, believing that they are enforcing the law fairly. And now they see what's going on and they know the writing's on the wall. And their work is being perverted. Like their work is now being turned upside down. And now these people go into work to fight for antitrust enforcement. And they end up being put in roles to help monopolies and duopolies form and price fix and price gouge. So they become agents of the very things that they're out there trying to protect against, Harry.
Lots of stuff going on here, Ben. Let's start with the letter. I'd call this a well-crafted Washington resignation letter. The first sentence is, I had told Assistant Attorney General Slater that I would be for about a year. That's another way of saying, I'm not getting kicked out, even though he may well be getting kicked out. This was always the plan, etc. So first is the CYA aspect of it. But I want to move to your basic point about the hollowing out and ravaging of DOJ, because those numbers are eye-popping, triple anything you've ever seen, but they very dramatically understate what's going on in the following respects. First of all, there are many divisions, and now you could point perhaps to antitrust, where there have been disproportionate numbers of exits that essentially have decapitated the whole place. So when the department said, oh, we're not even going to investigate the Renee Good shooting, you had the top 4 people in the criminal section of the Civil Rights Division leave en masse, all resign. And that was a deafening vote of no confidence that has really reverberated throughout that small section as well as the country, really. Second, the department disproportionately relies on the sorts of people who have been there a while, who really have the seasoned judgment and know the kinds of cases that are done. So now this guy was a political guy. He's only been there for a year, but the story that you've told of the numbers doesn't take into account how many important people have been pushed to the side or have left because they can't abide it. Third, the people who remain, a big part of the story, and I've talked to some of them. You really have a very large element of sort of fear and loathing of the remaining people and the leadership, very little communication with them, very little respect from them, a fear of even saying the wrong thing by the water cooler, and a general kind of, paranoia that, again, is worse in certain settings. And I just want to add, it's even infected certain U.S. attorneys' offices like the one in Minnesota. And then your point forth, the people who remain in many instances are being asked to just turn 180 degrees on what they came there to do, and not simply in general kind of very politically charged cases, but overall antitrust, a very good example. By the way, your account, quite accurate, but left out an important point. Slater also was crosswise with Pam Bondi, and that led to her downfall. And those sorts of things can happen in this administration. Who knows what, like, individual who knows Bondi or knows Vance or knows Trump just put a bug in their ear, and that was it, because this administration just doesn't care about sound enforcement at all. And they've got buddies that they want to mollify, do favors for. That's one of the ways they gain power. So now antitrust, I guess one last thing. Typically, when a leader goes, there's some remaining people who can, if nothing else, just kind of keep the trains running. Here, with this guy also leaving, you have a general decapitation of antitrust, and antitrust is a very good example. You need confirmed people in place to actually green light serious enforcement prosecutions. Now they will either be indolent or possibly just word will come on from on high, read Bondi or Blanche, for the kind of work they're doing. So that leads to the final point I want to make, which is the people who are still around there, maybe trying to hang in, maybe trying to even do good, are in this kind of zombie land where even as the department has to beat the bushes to find any warm body, they are hiring people by tweets from Chad Mizell, the last chief of staff. They're not employing, because they have such mistrust for the good professional folks who are still in the department, have decided to stick it out, either to try to do good, or they can't afford to lose a job, or whatever it is. And in all those situations, the people who are there are so often idle, and their mission has just been set to the side. And so that's yet another way in which the ravages of the department are well understated by these numbers, which, as I say, are eye-popping in and of themselves.
I want, when people hear the term antitrust, it relates back to the Sherman Antitrust Act, which was created when all of these barons, of the 19th century, late 19th century, that controlled the railroads and they controlled the oil, they would be owned by like a single person or a single trust, and they would buy everybody up, and then they would price gouge, and they would price fix as like a cartel by controlling the entire markets. And it was anti-capitalistic in the sense that it would destroy free and fair competition. Just obviously we can have a deeper antitrust lecture than that, but antitrust law is very, very important, especially now as prices are increasing, because one of the fundamental things that antitrust law tries to prevent against is price fixing plans. And antitrust is both criminal and civil in nature. But what the antitrust division also is responsible for is looking at big mergers, and whether or not certain mergers can be approved, and it has oversight over. So a lot of the fight here happened when Slater would not approve mergers that she found were clearly creating either monopolies or monopsonies, small clusters of ownership in an industry that would have the impact of ultimately screwing over the consumer. Now, even though she was a Trump pick, she was the Trump pick of what Trump was saying to the public, because Trump presented an image of, I'm going to go against big tech. That's what he said at his rallies. And he picked somebody who was actually not, saying, I'm just going to be vengefully going after big tech, but someone who actually was enforcing antitrust law against big tech mergers in a fairly even-keeled application. That's what started to piss off the higher ups, the Bondis and the Trumps and the Trump donors and the lobbyists who were saying, why I thought you were our guy, Donald. Like, why do you have her do it? She's blocking our mergers. Like, what the hell's going on here? Tell her to stop. And she wouldn't. That's when she got into kind of the fight with Bondi. But ultimately, how it impacts the consumer now is that your prices go up. some of the main reasons why groceries are more expensive and things are more expensive is because you may have one or two companies in a specific market, and they'll see inflation, what it is. They'll never move the prices. They'll never adjust downward if inflation adjusts downward. So once the price is up, it never goes back down once they can set a new limit on the price. But then they'll also use momentary inflation or systemic inflation as pretext to then raise the prices even more to build in profit margins, while actually, if it was a fair market, they could reduce prices, but they don't, because they don't have to, because they control the market and there's not really competition. So anyway, I wanted to let people know, so who cares about all of this? This is why you should care about all of this, Harry.
It's exactly right. We should. And look, as you say, Ben, the impact of this kind of sort of exemption giving, which Trump loves to do, is generally in the market. People can think, I'll roll the dice on this. I won't be deterred by the prospect of a suit, because I got my guy who I'm paying $1 million a month and he can get into the Oval Office, etc. Look, antitrust enforcement ebbs and flows in different administrations. It's true. Some are more bullish, some are more bearish. But what it doesn't do is do it in this respect by the doling out of favors. The general watchword of the Department of Justice, justice without fear or favor, absolutely applies to antitrust enforcement and absolutely affects the kind of bottom line life of consumers across the country in gasoline lines and grocery stores and appliance stores and the like. And you can maybe defend a generally more liberal or more restrained antitrust policy, but the notion of, oh, really? Oh, she hurt your feelings? Don't worry, I'll call up and fire her tomorrow and her deputy will go. That kind of erraticness, so characteristic of Trump and Bondi, is disaster for solid regulation of the markets and antitrust enforcement.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Make sure you hit subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. So after this video ends, search Talking Feds right now. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.